My name is Tarek. Welcome to Thorin's YouTube channel.
ESL One New York 2019 was won by Evil Geniuses, the former NRG squad. They became Evil Geniuses actually on day one of this event, and it was a dominant run. As shocking as it might be, because obviously the core of this squad had never won a truly big competition with the other big name elite tier teams there. They actually only lost a single map in the entire tournament. It was in the final to Astralis, and it was an overtime on train in which they'd actually already reached championship point for the whole tournament, and basically all became some sort of variant of that fucking sweating Pepe meme, like, oh god, oh, it's the overtime. And then the other problem is, Astralis are motherfucking legends. They're not just gonna roll over and let you take the win. So they were fighting back. Device went pretty fucking ham, started hitting every no scope in sight, and extended the game. So that's the only map that anyone was able to beat the EG former NRG squad on. Sure, basically it was them playing Astralis that made this run epic. Their other games were against the FaZe clan team, which had a brand new lineup, didn't look that convincing, was easily beaten. And then G2, who overperformed and beat out the Ents squad, who would have at least been a bigger name. And then G2 lineup that's never going to exist. It was for that one LAN only. And you saw G2 played way worse once they got away from shitters like Ents and actually started playing a real squad like EG. They had nothing whatsoever for EG. But if you play Astralis twice in a tournament, remember this is a smaller format, it was just 2 4-team groups and then 4 teams in the playoff. There was no quarterfinals, it wasn't the normal format like at ESL One Cologne, etc. or Dream Masters Malmo coming up, although Malmo doesn't have the best of 5 final. But you did play Astralis in like half of the maps, in fact more, I think you played them in 6 out of the 10 maps at the tournament or something like that. Let me think, is that right? 6. No, I think they played 12 maps at the tournament, if I'm correct. So at least half the time, though, you are playing Astralis, basically. And they're, in theory, I don't know if they're the number 1 team, because on paper, Team Liquid would be because of this epic run in the summer. But to a lot of people, they think, in terms of, like, eye test, that Astralis is the best. You see Pimp, Moses, pretty much everyone except me says that Astralis is the best. And even I would probably maybe concede it now, but the problem is, I don't really know, because obviously this EG thing throws a little spanner in the works, doesn't it? So with that said, you play the Astralis team. Now, funnily enough, they already had, before this tournament, a nice record, a winning record against Astralis over the last few months, especially if you include the last tournament they played with DAPS, which was EPL, so a few months ago, but they even beat them in that tournament. Obviously, in the new Legends stage of the Major, the top 16 part, they 2-0'd them, where they had the epic train overtime game that they won, and then they beat them on Nuke. Then they met them in the semi-finals of the Major. Despite some good games, it was actually Astralis who swept that series 2-0. Device had some amazing play. In this particular tournament, they met in the group stage again. This time, it was another 2-0. It was a close 2-0, but the most interesting part, and something that will be very, very relevant as we go forwards in history with EG, was that the guys from EG had the balls to pick Vertigo into Astralis. The same Astralis that picked Vertigo to Team Liquid and beat them at the Major in the quarterfinals, and at this tournament later picked Vertigo into Team Liquid and beat them on it again, actually themselves were beaten on Vertigo by the EG guys. And the thing is, EG was a team that didn't play Vertigo. This wasn't one of the maps in their pool. Certainly not a map you thought they'd pick. So quite frankly, that was a very ballsy move, which suggested they'd watched the demo from the Major of the Team Liquid game. Remember, Astralis didn't pick it against anyone else. And they figured out they had a plan, and they had the balls to pick it directly into the guys from Astralis. Now, you can say that shows a lack of confidence, as I think it was Pimp on the desk maybe did. I kind of agree. I would have just gone with Train again. But then again, as we saw from the final, maybe they know better than us, and they were right not to go with Train, because what a great performance they had. Then when they got to the final, they beat Astralis 3-1 and absolutely could have won 3-0, but they weren't able to hold on and cross the line. It was kind of like one of those games where someone can't get it over the 1-yard line in the NFL. They can't run it, they fuck up all the throws, etc. That's what it felt like. But eventually you came back and won anyway in the overtime session, as it were, in the context of the final, by winning the 4th map very convincingly. So it didn't matter. You didn't win overtime on Train, but it wasn't the end of the world. And even then, you still kept pushing them in overtime on Train. What overall a dominant performance this was. Over all the maps, so they played 6 maps against Astralis. They were out fragging Astralis. They had big T-sides against Astralis. They were better on maps that Astralis picked. They beat Astralis twice on Astralis' Inferno. And then to win the whole fucking tournament, beat them on Nuke. Well, Inferno was the map that never betrayed Astralis, even when they went really down in the summer and the end of the spring. Inferno was still a fabulous map for them. In comes and they're picking it against NRG, now EG, and EG's beating them on it. Then you consider Nuke even though, yes, it had gone away from them, they've now beaten Astralis twice in a row, Nuke. Once at the Major, once at this tournament. These were the whole maps of peak Astralis. This is crazy shit. So right now, the interesting thing about Evil Geniuses isn't even just that they won the tournament, which is obviously epic in the context of NA, Counter-Strike, and who plays in their team, but it's that they are the kryptonite to Astralis. They've established themselves. So what an interesting new dynamic they have, right? They've won 3 out of 4 series against Astralis over the last few months, one of them even being a best of 5. They've won something mad like 7 out of the 10 maps against them. One of the maps that Astralis won was obviously this overtime game on Train. So this is crazy stuff that they're doing. With that said, in the final itself, Astralis didn't look at their best. With that said, though, they beat them when they looked fine in the other games in the group stages of the last 2 tournaments. When Astralis looked at their absolute best at the Major, they still took them close. It wasn't for that device opening pistol round Train. I'd love to see how that series played out. And obviously, the guys from EG adapted since then, hence why they actually didn't allow Overpass to be played, which previously was actually their pick, if you remember. So, to me, I think part of the problem is, yeah, Astralis wasn't at their best, but I also think people are overrating what Astralis' best is on a consistent level because of how well Astralis has done against Team Liquid. Against Team Liquid, even, Astralis isn't just outgunning them or doing god-tier strats. Sometimes they're just out-clutching them, they're actually being more poised under pressure, they're using veteran advantages to their, a veteran's kind of, I would say savvy to their advantage. Like that's all Glaive was doing on Overpass. He was just reading the game and then waiting until he knew there was a lull in what the terrorists were doing, peeking out while someone was setting up to throw a flash and just getting free kills, free damage, free info. And then from that, people were able to make ballsy moves when they had the advantage. So I think when they've gone against EG, they haven't been able to do all that sort of stuff actually. And crucially, they haven't been able to get the games close enough, at least with Astralis in the lead, that any of those factors really came into play as much. The Major was different. That is the World Championship. In this particular final, they should have felt pressure. Team Liquid did last year in finals like this, but EG bizarrely didn't feel any pressure. So interesting dynamic going forwards if this is going to be the kryptonite to Astralis and they can win tournaments. There's the interesting detail. In terms of players, Breezy was extremely good. Clearly the MVP of the tournament, but quite frankly, I'd find it hard to put this guy outside of the top 3 or 4 players in the world right now. So Simple hasn't been that good recently, but he's been exceptional other than that. But he hasn't played as many tournaments this year. Ziwu, who's been god tier, but obviously he had a little bit of a drop off at the Major, and those numbers were still very, very good. Elijah's still extremely good. Team Liquid just isn't winning. I think right after that, it's Breezy, and you can certainly make a case he's in the mix between Simple for inactivity and Elijah. He's around that level. So this guy's extremely good right now. I mean, it can't just be against Astralis because he puts up the numbers, but against Astralis as well. That's another massive feather in this guy's cap. Breezy, over the last 10 maps against Astralis on LAN, which was over the last 2 tournaments since they played 4 series, is plus 73 over those 10 maps. So that means he averages just over a plus 7 differential against Astralis on every map he plays against them on LAN. This is bonkers stuff, guys. Astralis won one of those LANs and was in the final of the other one. Like, you shouldn't be able to do that when you're a guy who hasn't been established as a god-tier player. Remember, famously, Astralis shut down star players. Usually, people have problems with that and you have to beat them as a team, as it were, or in the map pool. Cirque has been way better these last 2 LANs than I've ever seen him previously. Like, he always could put up numbers, but he'd have his big games against the lesser squads. When he got to the big match, like a big semi, if he was against the top team, he'd disappear a bit, or he'd only turn up on a map like Overpass or Train. Now he turns up and turned up against Astralis in the final, in big games and against the top teams, and his style is effective. That opening style, that super aggro style, that JW-esque style, is really tough to make work, but he's found a way to integrate that into what he does. And crucially, EG knows how to play around it. Like, the pacing of EG is so interesting because they can sometimes go so slow, but they can also do those fast hits where all of those riflers just sprawl out over the map. Train T-side's a very good example of this, and they can rapidly hit you, and as a result they don't have to always make the perfect read, etc. They just have so much firepower coming in that they're able to run over even Astralis, and teams like this sometimes just outright win the game gun duels. In fact, you see when Astralis is CT side, they can absolutely just straight up lose all the gun duels to the T's if it's Team Liquid or it's NRG, the super skilled squads in the world. Ethan, still somewhat underwhelming in terms of overall numbers and how much hype there is, but he performed better here than at the Major. Tarek is just always good enough, quite frankly. He's never going to be the best player, but he's always good enough, and he has his maps where he goes off, and crucially seems to play well under pressure in this squad. And Stanislaw has done some really good in-game leading. I felt a lot of his reads were good on the T side. did a great job in the veto, seemingly did a great job motivating his men in a way that Daps wasn't able to. I do think, though, that at this LAN, his fragging was mad overrated. People were talking like, oh, he's great fragging. I'm like, yeah, traditionally he is, but at this tournament, his numbers were pretty pedestrian, actually, at the end. And it was more everything else that matters. That wasn't as relevant. Now, the interesting thing is, as a result of this, like Ethan and Stan not being that sick overall, I actually don't think still, even in terms of effective skill right now, NRG is as skilled man for man as the Team Liquid squad, but it doesn't really matter if you're beating Astralis and you win tournaments, right? They're certainly close behind them, and some of these players absolutely, in some terms, someone like Ethan, in future could come online. Obviously, Stanislaus going to have maps where he frags out, and I'd also even say some of his frags, doesn't necessarily matter the number, some of the frags he gets are crucial ones, or he'll win in like a clutch scenario sometimes, which you don't normally expect from your in-game leader. I think also an interesting element for the NRG guys, now EG, is the map pool component. First of all, they like the I'm a pet approach, which means basically you try to practice basically all the maps to some degree so that you can vary your pick quite a lot. Like in the past, they used to just ban Vertigo at least half the time, and then usually pick into something like Train, like Dust 2. Now, they're varying up their pick a lot more, depending on the opponent, and even the ban sometimes. So, they had 3 different first picks in this tournament, where they went with, like, a Dust 2 pick. They had, let me see, what else was it? They had an Inferno pick against G2. They had Nuke, no, that was it later on, the best of 5. Oh, they had the Vertigo pick against Astralis. Yeah, there we go. So, to me, I will say G2 picked Dust 2, so it was an obvious one there. So maybe it's more like 2. So they didn't show like insane map diversity, but overall, like they were pretty strong all in all. One of the only losses obviously was Train, which is definitely a map in their wheelhouse. I think that was more Astralis being epic than Astralis being better than them necessarily on Train at the moment. The Vertigo angle is very interesting because they didn't have to use it much. They themselves just used it as kind of a joker against Astralis. And in the final, clearly no one wanted any part of Vertigo. But I could see a world in which they can certainly use this as a punish against teams that don't like Vertigo and command Vertigo respect bans. So that makes their already nice middle map pool quite good, because right now they don't have like the deepest map pool in terms of what they've shown us with Stanislaw, but they're winning right in the heart of maps that seemingly everyone plays, Dust 2 and Inferno. So this is very impressive stuff and means that you can beat a lot of squads in the world right now, and you always have one pick against a lot of them that they're not going to enjoy right now. Then they have Train in their back pocket, as I said. You know they can still play Overpass and Mirage. Those used to be maps of the old NRG squad. It's just with this Stanislaw team, they haven't done it as much, and actually not as many people play Mirage now overall. It's going to go out. And Overpass, it's more of a pick your poison, and the problem is you don't want to play the best teams aren't necessary. So I kind of like, with the big fragging, the angles that they're going with. I do think, though, they maybe got here too early. That's what I'm interested to see. I thought maybe they needed a few more months more going towards 2020 to have some more hard knocks, some big tough battles. But they've already made it here and won a big championship already. They've already beaten Astralis again and in a massive game. I will say, though, they did heavily front run on that first map, which I thought put them in an amazing position. You saw when they got way behind on the first map in the semi at the major, how they struggled a little bit, and then getting mentally back into the game happened, but gradually, not in the same rapid way that a team like Astralis can just turn it around completely and then tear off a whole 8-9 rounds against you. Interestingly, the angle, obviously, for this team was the 2 trades they made this year, where they brought in Tarek for Fogley earlier in the year. Certainly brought more fragging, didn't hurt the results, messed a little bit of the structure up, but they had a lot of fragging still. The Daps one was the one that I thought was the wrong move. Like, I thought, is it going to bring that much to bring in Stanislaw? He'd been so underwhelming in Team Liquid and in complexity overall for his hype and his reputation. But when you give him stars, I mean, we've seen it. This is comparable to what he did in Optic. He does a great approach. So I've got to say, the approach has worked out. Well, congrats to whoever made those tough calls and was willing to do the risky and ruthless move, but that ended up being a real upgrade, not just an upgrade on paper. Interestingly, NRG, just like Team Liquid, have ended up finding the whole dazed approach to success, where you stack as much talent as possible and then try and play off them with calls in the game, as opposed to a like playbook, more of a structured, like what the old NRG squad was, more like the Sean Gares, like European style of it. Have someone for each of the set roles. Don't need too much skill, need just enough skill, need just enough tactics, just enough team play, make yourself nice and balanced, and then try and win on your maps and grind out those key aspects using structure to win the game. They're much more like Team Liquid in the sense that they have all these fraggers, you turn them loose, you play a little bit looser shooter, and then the in-game leader tries to make the genius calls and sometimes even frag himself. I do think the most interesting wrinkle isn't even just that they're favourites over Astralis and that they're the kryptonite. It's that if we end up with a three-way at the moment, which we haven't seen what's going to happen to Na'Vi and Vitality and the other squads, where it's Team Liquid, Astralis and EG, and it depends who plays each other, this could be a way, I actually think, for Team Liquid to win more championships, because we don't know yet if Team Liquid's going to beat Astralis. They certainly came close this time, but they didn't. They've lost 2 in a row to them now. But I'm almost certain Team Liquid can beat the EG squad. I think it'll be a very, very messy game if they play super chaotic. They'll play maps like Inferno, like DOS 2. As a result, I think they even have a Vertigo they could fuck with the guys from Team Liquid on. But I do think, actually, if you shadow box the two teams, that Team Liquid will overall have the edge in that matchup. They're going to lose some because there's going to be some DOS 2s involved. But I think, considering Team Liquid bans Train, I don't think Vertigo is something you want to pick into them. Team Liquid can play all the rest. Team Liquid can pick overpassing you if you don't like it. I actually think that Team Liquid's going to have the slight edge. Psychologically, I think they do. As much as people like Cirque and Breezy might be loving it now, I think when they play Elysian Twists, in their brain, Elysian Twists are better than them. I think actually they know that Team Liquid's won way more championships than them. And Team Liquid doesn't have any of the psychological block that they have against the Astralis at the moment, or any of the demons haunting them from the past matchups. They're just going to play against EG, and I think I would give TL sort of the 65-35 edge over them. Mixture of map pool, overall fragging skill and strength more over towards the TL side. And then I think the psychological component initially will actually mean that Team Liquid has the edge. So I'm interested to see if that'll become like a rock, paper, scissors type scenario for the championships. I'll just say as a final note, the whole angle of like, oh, it's because of Evil Geniuses. Oh, Evil Geniuses back in Counter-Strike. So wonderful. Love the name Evil Geniuses. Wow, the org. Evil Geniuses won the best in the past. Maybe was it because of Evil Geniuses? Is it because of an Evil Geniuses that they won the tournament? Did they feel more confident? Did they get more support from the org? They joined Evil Geniuses on day one just because Evil Geniuses paid like $3 million of like right up until the tournament and didn't have their deal done. No, having a different jersey on that was bluer didn't make them win the tournament. This is ridiculous. They could have beaten the Astralis team in the semi of the major, and I think they actually would have won the major. So I think it's massively overselling the EG angle to suggest that the org in any way or having that shirt on made them win. I don't think I gave them any extra confidence. I think actually their loss at the major primed them and showed them where they were weak or mentally where they were weak, and then they fixed some of that or were able to ignore it and just get the win over Astralis this time around. So very, very interesting. Certainly a contender for a new top team. Breezy a contender for best player in the world at this point in time. He's putting together that kind of resume, but still a little bit to go to prove it in the way Team Liquid did in the summer and the way Astralis has done throughout their careers. This video was kindly supported by stayfungg GG, Patrick Ribeiro, Alice the Alchemist, Dean Tanglis, Alexander Rao, Blunt Smoking Anus Destroyer, Dane Cuskley, JDubs, Chi Mao, NateDOhDoubleG, OllieJ, Tobias Bernasconi, Who the Fuck is Viathan? Special thanks, as always, goes out to Jerky's Minion. Would you like to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Maybe you want to ask me a question in my monthly video AMA. Do you want teasers for my upcoming content, who the guests are going to be? Maybe you even want to take part in an online esports discussion with yours truly. Well, then put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today. The Patreon link is in the description box below.